Okay, let's unpack this. If you've been feeling a bit of whiplash lately looking at the geopolitical landscape,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, specifically the rapidly shifting dynamics between the United States, Iran, Russia, and, well, the looming shadow of China, you are definitely not alone.
Right. The sheer volume of noise right now is staggering.
It really is. The alerts, the press briefings, the conflicting narratives, it is a lot to process, even for those of us who track this daily.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to cut straight through that noise. We are zeroing in on a very specific stack of reporting anchored by a recent CNN transcript.
And this transcript details some really profound intelligence regarding Russia's active support for Iran against U.S. military targets.
Yeah, we're going to dissect the intelligence itself, look at the starkly confident response from the U.S. administration, and view this through the cold strategic lens of military historians.
Historians who see this not as a surprise, but as an inevitable evolution of proxy warfare.
Right. But before we get into the actual mechanics of what is happening in the sky and on the ground, we do have a crucial framing note about the material we are navigating today.
That's right. Before we jump in, we need to note that today's sources contain politically charged statements from various political figures, including both the current administration and their critics. We want to make it absolutely clear to you that we are not taking any sides here.
Not at all.
We are not endorsing any of the viewpoints, rhetoric, or policies mentioned. Our sole objective is to impartially report the content provided in these sources and help you understand the ideas and dynamics at play.
Precisely. We are just your guides through this specific terrain.
Yep. We're going to look at the reporting, examine the specific quotes, and synthesize the military analysis provided in our source stack so you can build your own understanding of this intensely complex situation.
And to really grasp the gravity of the terrain we're covering today, we have to start with the human element.
You do.
Geopolitics can so easily devolve into an abstract game, moving pieces around a global chessboard, discussing satellite telemetry, grand strategy.
It becomes very detached.
Right. But at the core of the intelligence community's profound concern right now is a very heavy, very tragic reality.
Yeah.
According to the reporting just days ago, the United States lost 6 service members in an Iranian drone strike.
6 lives.
6 lives. That is the grim context that hangs over every single piece of intelligence and every political statement we're going to look at today.
It is the inescapable context, and it's vital to clarify what the sources actually say about this.
Right, let's be clear on the link.
The reporting explicitly notes that it is currently unknown if there is a direct confirmed connection between that specific fatal drone strike and the Russian intelligence sharing we're about to discuss.
So no confirmed link yet.
No. However, from the perspective of the intelligence community, that lack of a confirmed link doesn't diminish the alarm.
I'd imagine it amplifies it.
It absolutely does. It takes the theoretical risk of Russian involvement and places it right next to a realized fatal reality.
Wow.
When U.S. intelligence officials are assessing the possibility of Russia handing targeting data to Iran, they aren't viewing it as a hypothetical wargaming exercise.
Right, they're viewing it through the agonizing lens of recent American casualties.
Exactly. This is exactly why the reporting emphasizes that officials do not view this as a trivial matter. They are treating it with the utmost severity.
Which brings us directly to the core revelation in these CNN sources.
The main event.
Yeah. Multiple sources familiar with the intelligence are stating that Russia is now actively aiding Iran's war effort.
And it's not just vague diplomatic support.
No, it is highly specific, highly lethal assistance. They are reportedly providing Iran with intelligence on the locations and movements of U.S. military targets.
Specifically U.S. troops, U.S. ships, and U.S. aircraft.
Right. And to my knowledge, based on what we are reading here, this is the first real indication that Moscow is stepping directly into this specific conflict.
It's a massive escalation.
So what I want to understand is the how and the why. We know Iran has a military. They have their own hardware. Why do they need Russia to act as their spotter?
That is the pivotal question. To understand the why, we have to look at the current state of Iran's military infrastructure as described in these reports.
Okay.
The reporting indicates that Iran's military capabilities are being severely degraded day after day by the ongoing fighting.
Taking a beating.
A severe beating. And when a military is systematically degraded, one of the first things to suffer is situational awareness.
Meaning their ability to just see what's happening.
Exactly. Their domestic radar installations, their own tracking capabilities, their communication nodes.
The basics of modern warfare.
Right. These are all likely taking massive hits or being forced offline to avoid destruction. So Iran is effectively losing its ability to see the battlefield clearly.
They are, in a very real sense, going blind.
Yes, and tracking fast-moving, highly advanced U.S. naval ships and aircraft requires incredibly sophisticated, persistent surveillance.
Which a degraded Iranian military simply cannot maintain on their own.
Not a chance.
So they're in the dark, and suddenly Russia flips the lights back on for them.
Exactly. But it's not just flipping the lights on, it's handing them a pair of night vision goggles when they previously only had a flashlight.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The sources highlight that much of this intelligence is coming from Russia's sophisticated satellite system.
Okay, let's talk about the satellites.
The Russian orbital network represents a quantum leap in technological capability compared to whatever domestic, ground-based, or regional assets a degraded Iran could muster even on a good day.
It is the ultimate eye in the sky.
It is. Russia is essentially acting as a massive force multiplier here. They don't need to put Russian boots on the ground or fly Russian jets in the airspace.
Right, they just send the data.
By simply handing over precise coordinates, the real-time or near real-time movements of incredibly valuable American assets, they allow Iran to punch far above its current degraded weight class.
I want to push back on the immediate threat level for a second, though, because the sources are very careful to include a specific caveat.
They are.
The reporting notes that it is currently unclear if this newly shared Russian intelligence has actually been used in any specific attacks yet.
Key word being yet.
Right. So we have the sharing of data, but no confirmed execution based specifically on that data. Does that mitigate the danger?
Not at all.
Really? If they haven't used it, is it possible this is more of a political flex by Russia than an immediate tactical nightmare for the U.S.?
I mean, it's a crucial caveat for the journalists to include, ensuring they don't overstate confirmed events. But from a tactical military perspective, it absolutely does not mitigate the danger.
How so?
Because even if you cannot definitively link a Russian satellite image to a specific Iranian missile launch today, the mere existence of this data pipeline fundamentally alters the dynamics of the battle space.
It changes the whole game.
Exactly. The greatest asset any naval or air commander has is the element of surprise. The ability to maneuver, reposition, and strike without the adversary knowing your launch point or your destination.
Right.
If Russian satellites are maintaining a constant track on American carrier strike groups or aircraft movements and feeding that directly to Tehran, the element of surprise is severely compromised.
If not entirely erased.
Exactly.
Because even if Iran doesn't pull the trigger immediately, just knowing they're watching forces the U.S. to change how it operates.
Precisely. It forces U.S. commanders to assume a posture of constant elevated vulnerability. They have to expend immense amounts of resources, time, and fuel on defensive maneuvers, deception, and rapid repositioning.
You can no longer assume you're operating in the shadows.
You have to assume your adversary has a god's eye view. So whether Iran has successfully executed a strike with this specific intel or not, the operational friction it introduces for the United States military is immediate and profound.
Okay, so that is the incredibly tense reality on the ground and in orbit. We have an intelligence community deeply concerned about a degraded adversary receiving a world-class technological lifeline.
A very dangerous situation.
But when I read the responses from the White House in these sources, it honestly feels like reading dispatches from an entirely different reality.
It is a jarring pivot.
The messaging strategy from the administration seems to be a highly coordinated effort to completely downplay this story.
It is a stark contrast, isn't it? When you analyze the statements provided in the sources from various administration officials, there is a very deliberate, unified front.
They aren't just ignoring it.
No, they are aggressively leaning into a narrative of absolute operational control and informational supremacy.
Let's break down exactly how they are doing that, starting with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Okay.
He gave an interview to CBS News, and the interviewer asked him essentially what the average American should think about this. Isn't this a big and dangerous deal?
And his response was very revealing.
His response was, well, we're tracking everything. Our commanders are aware of everything. We have the best intelligence in the world.
He's projecting complete dominance.
He then claims they know who is talking to whom, why they are talking, how accurate the info is, and how it factors into U.S. plans. He is basically projecting omniscience.
Omniscience is the exact right word. Secretary Hegseth is deploying a classic strategy of deterrence through perceived total awareness.
Right.
By stating the U.S. has the best intelligence in the world and knows who is talking to who, he is directly trying to neutralize the psychological impact of the Russian satellite threat.
He wants people to know the U.S. is watching the watchers.
Exactly. He wants the American public and, frankly, adversarial listeners to believe that the U.S. has the upper hand. The implication is, yes, Russia might be trying to look at us, but we are looking at them looking at us.
It's an assertion that the U.S. intelligence apparatus is so vast and penetrating that there are no blind spots, not even in the back-channel communications between Moscow and Tehran. But then Hegseth makes a really interesting pivot. He moves from praising the military intelligence apparatus to fiercely defending the specific capabilities of the president himself.
This is where the messaging gets very specific to this administration.
He tells CBS News that the commander-in-chief has an incredible knack at knowing how to mitigate those risks.
Oh.
He assures the public that any communication that shouldn't be happening is being confronted strongly.
Right.
And then he says people can expect conversations with the Russians to stop this sharing. And he goes further, drawing a direct comparison to the previous administration.
Yes, he does.
He claims President Trump can get things done through his relationships that other presidents, specifically naming Joe Biden, never could have.
This is a fascinating rhetorical shift. Hegseth is essentially transitioning the ultimate line of defense from hardware and analysts, the best intelligence in the world, to the personal diplomatic leverage of the president.
He's putting it all on the president's shoulders.
He is attributing a singular, unique power to the president's personal relationships with foreign leaders, specifically Vladimir Putin.
Right.
The claim here is that a complex strategic intelligence sharing operation between two sovereign nations engaged in a proxy conflict can be halted simply through a direct or indirect conversation initiated by the president.
Which is a massive claim. He is framing the mitigation of a global military threat not as a matter of military countermeasures, but as a matter of personal diplomatic willpower.
Exactly. It attempts to reassure the public by placing the solution entirely within the perceived unique skill set of the current executive. But the most revealing part of Hegseth's interview is his answer to the most direct question regarding the safety of U.S. personnel.
Right. The reporter asks him point blank, does this put U.S. personnel in any more danger than they otherwise would be?
And he doesn't hedge.
Not at all. He says, well, the Russian involvement, no one's putting us in danger. We're putting the other guys in danger. That's our job. So we're not concerned about that.
We're putting the other guys in danger. That is the distilled essence of this administration's public posture. It is a complete and total rejection of the premise of vulnerability.
He flips the script completely.
He pivots the narrative entirely away from defense, worrying about Russian satellites, and focuses exclusively on U.S. offensive capabilities.
By stating flatly that they are not concerned, Hegseth is attempting to project an aura of invincibility.
But as an analyst looking at the broader context of these sources, you have to hold that statement up against the reality we discussed earlier.
Right.
You have a Pentagon projecting absolute, unbothered, offensive dominance, running directly parallel to an intelligence community that the sources say views this with profound concern.
All under the shadow of 6 recently lost service members.
Exactly. The friction between the public rhetoric of invulnerability and the private intelligence reality of elevated threat is immense.
And it's not just Hegseth. We see the exact same confidence, though phrased differently, from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
Another angle on the same unified front.
The sources note she told reporters that even if Russia is sharing intelligence with Iran, it clearly isn't making much of a difference given the success of U.S. operations so far.
Leavitt's approach is what we might call pragmatic, outcome-based dismissal.
Okay, unpack that.
Where Hegseth focuses on total awareness and the president's diplomatic knack, Leavitt focuses simply on the scoreboard.
The result.
Right. She isn't necessarily confirming or denying the intelligence sharing. She is attempting to render it irrelevant. Her logic is straightforward. If U.S. military operations are continuing to hit their targets and achieve their objectives, then whatever data Russia is feeding Iran must be fundamentally ineffective.
But wait, if Leavitt says the operations are successful anyway, does this satellite stuff even matter? If the U.S. is still blowing up the targets they want to blow up, maybe she has a point.
She has a point regarding the current operational momentum, assuming the administration's assessment of their success is accurate. However, from a strategic standpoint, it's a dangerous metric to rely on indefinitely. Just because an adversary hasn't successfully leveraged an advantage today doesn't mean the advantage is useless.
Right.
If you are playing a game of chess and your opponent suddenly gets to see your side of the board through a mirror, the fact that they haven't checkmated you yet doesn't mean the mirror isn't a massive problem.
That makes sense.
Levitt's statement implies that the gap in capabilities between the U.S. and Iran is so vast that even an injection of top-tier Russian intelligence cannot tip the scales. It is supreme confidence in American military overmatch.
Which perfectly sets the stage for how President Trump himself reacted.
Yes, the setting for this is key.
The context here is really something. According to the reporting, he was at a college sports roundtable when a Fox News reporter asked him about Russia's role in providing this intelligence.
And his response?
His response was incredibly blunt. He said, "What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else. I mean, why talk about a war?"
The bluntness is a tactic in itself. This reaction perfectly encapsulates the broader strategy of downplaying the issue, but it does so through an outright aggressive dismissal of the topic's relevance in that specific setting.
Basically saying, not now, not here.
Exactly. By labeling it a stupid question and asking why talk about a war, the president is forcefully attempting to dictate the media narrative. He is refusing to engage with the premise that this intelligence sharing represents a crisis that demands immediate public presidential attention at a sporting event.
Right.
It is a way of signaling to his base and to the public at large that this is not something he considers worthy of elevating to an emergency level.
And he followed that up with another comment to CNN on Friday, basically declaring victory over the Iranian threat.
What was the exact phrasing?
He said, "A week ago, Iran was powerful, and now they have been indeed neutered." Neutered is a wildly evocative word to use.
It is extremely potent imagery, and it is designed to project total, irreversible dominance. If we synthesize these three viewpoints from the administration, Hegseth claims absolute informational and diplomatic control.
Leavitt claims absolute operational success on the scoreboard.
And the president claims the adversary has been completely neutralized, neutered.
It is a hermetically sealed narrative of supreme confidence.
They are aggressively swatting away the idea that Russian-Iranian cooperation poses any credible threat to American supremacy.
So as a listener, you are presented with two very different pictures. You have the tactical reality of Russian satellites providing an eye in the sky for an adversary, deeply concerning the intelligence community.
Right.
And you have the White House projecting unbothered, absolute dominance.
Yeah, a huge disconnect.
To reconcile these two things, we have to pull back from the daily press briefings and look at the broader historical and strategic chessboard.
And the sources provide a brilliant avenue for this.
They do, through an interview with retired U.S. Army Colonel Peter Mansour, who is now the chair of military history at Ohio State University.
His perspective is vital here.
CNN asks him about the significance of Russia taking this step to provide sensitive intelligence. His immediate reaction is fascinating because he doesn't sound outraged or shocked at all.
What does he say?
He just says, "Well, my first thought is, but of course they are."
But of course they are. That is the voice of a military historian who has spent his life analyzing the long game of great power competition.
He's not surprised at all.
Not in the least. Colonel Mansour is stripping away the emotional shock value and the political outrage from the headline. He isn't viewing this as some sudden, unprecedented, unprovoked act of malice by Moscow.
How does he view it?
He is viewing it as an entirely predictable, logical, and perhaps even inevitable maneuver within the established rules of a much larger global conflict.
He lays out exactly why he thinks it's inevitable. He says, this is payback for the United States, providing Ukraine intelligence on the position of Russian forces and assets in the vicinity of Ukraine.
The payback angle.
Right. He actually uses the phrase tit for tat and says he would be astonished if Russia didn't do this.
This is the crucial paradigm shift that Mansour brings to the table. He is asking us to widen our aperture.
Okay, zoom out for us.
For years now, the United States has been deeply and publicly involved in supporting Ukraine against the Russian invasion. And a massive component of that support hasn't just been money or weapons. It has been precise, actionable intelligence.
The U.S. has been doing exactly what Russia is doing now.
Exactly. The U.S. has effectively been the eye in the sky for Ukraine, using American satellite and surveillance architecture to provide Ukrainian forces with the locations of Russian troop concentrations, supply depots, and command centers.
The U.S. helped Ukraine target a massive invading Russian military apparatus.
Right. And now the theater has shifted. Now the U.S. is directly engaged with Iran in the Middle East, and Iran's military is the one being degraded.
So, in Mansour's analysis, Russia stepping in to be the eye in the sky for Iran against U.S. forces is simply the brutal reciprocal logic of modern proxy warfare.
It is literal payback. It is Moscow looking at Washington and saying, you exposed our vulnerabilities and aided in the targeting of our assets in the European theater. We are now going to expose your vulnerabilities and aid in the targeting of your assets in the Middle Eastern theater.
It is a grim symmetry.
It is a terrifying symmetry.
But the host in the CNN transcript pushes back on Mansour a bit here and brings up the exact human cost we started this deep dive with.
The casualties.
Right. The host asks, considering the vulnerability of U.S. forces, and specifically citing the 6 dead service members, shouldn't the U.S. president or the defense secretary more definitively call out Russia for this help?
And Mansour agrees with the premise of the question to a point. He says, yes, from a diplomatic standpoint, the U.S. absolutely should demarch Russia.
Meaning they should issue a formal, official diplomatic protest, making their concerns about this intelligence sharing entirely public to the international community.
Correct. Protocol and the basic mechanics of international relations dictate that when a foreign power aids in the targeting of your troops, you formally protest it.
But there's a catch.
A huge catch. Mansour immediately points out the massive strategic complication in doing so. He notes that it would be incredibly hypocritical for the United States to march up to Russia and say, I'm sorry you can't support your allies, while the United States is actively doing the exact same thing by supporting Ukraine against Russia.
Is it really the exact same thing, though? I mean, the context of the conflicts is different.
The geopolitical justification for the conflicts is entirely different, yes. But the mechanism of support sharing advanced targeting intelligence to enable a proxy or ally to strike a geopolitical rival is functionally identical.
Oh, I see.
Mansour is highlighting how deeply entangled this web of proxy conflicts has become. In this era of great power competition, the rules of engagement are largely reciprocal.
So nobody really has the moral high ground here.
At least regarding the methods of proxy support, the moral high ground becomes exceedingly difficult to maintain when both superpowers are employing identical strategies of intelligence sharing. If the U.S. establishes a precedent that sharing targeting data is a legitimate way to support an ally in Europe, Russia will inevitably claim that same precedent to support its ally in the Middle East.
And Mansour doesn't sugarcoat what this means on the ground. When asked about this specific advantage this gives Iran, he is blunt.
What's his assessment?
He says it gives them targeting information, which is highly useful if they have the assets necessary to strike those targets.
Right.
And while he acknowledges it will be very hard to definitively parse out if any one specific strike was solely made possible by Russian intel, he delivers a very sobering conclusion. He says, we can probably assume that they were.
That assumption is the operational reality the U.S. military now has to live with. As we discussed earlier, even without a digital receipt proving a satellite image led to a missile launch, the strategic environment is irrevocably altered.
You just have to operate under the assumption that your enemy is guided by an advanced superpower.
And that assumption drains resources, complicates logistics, and elevates the baseline level of danger for every single service member in the region.
Which brings us to a critical inflection point in our analysis. Because if you assume the enemy has a superpower guiding them, it completely upends your timeline for victory.
It changes everything about the duration of the conflict.
Let's move into the final pieces of intelligence provided in these sources, which expand the map considerably. The reporting notes that over the past week, the U.S. administration had been communicating a hope that this would be a roughly 4 to 5 week war effort.
4 to 5 weeks.
Now, they acknowledged it could go longer, but 4 to 5 weeks was the timeline they were hoping for and floating publicly.
A 4 to 5 week timeline is highly revealing. It implies a strategic belief in a campaign of rapid, overwhelming, and decisive degradation.
They thought they could wrap it up quickly.
Right. The administration is essentially betting that they can destroy Iran's critical infrastructure, their command and control, and their weapons stockpiles so thoroughly and so quickly that within a month or so, Iran will simply lack the operational capacity to sustain hostilities.
It relies on the adversary running out of the means to fight back.
Exactly.
But how does the introduction of Russian satellite intelligence fundamentally threaten that 1-month timeline?
It threatens it profoundly because it acts as an artificial life support system.
Okay, an artificial life support system.
Think about it. If you destroy an adversary's radar installations, you've blinded them. A blind adversary is usually defeated very quickly because they can't shoot what they can't see.
Right.
But if Russia is acting as their prosthetic eyes, providing targeting data from orbit, Iran can continue to fight, continue to launch precise strikes, and continue to pose a lethal threat long after their own organosensory capabilities have been cratered by U.S. strikes.
So they can keep fighting blind, basically.
Because someone else is seeing for them. This introduces the massive threat of protraction. A swift, 4-week resolution becomes exponentially harder to achieve when your adversary is constantly resupplied with the most vital resource in modern warfare: accurate information.
It threatens to drag a rapid intervention into a grueling, extended war of attrition.
Precisely.
And as if that artificial life support system wasn't enough, the sources drop another massive bombshell that threatens to stretch this conflict even further.
It gets worse.
Much worse. U.S. intelligence, according to CNN, suggests that China may be getting ready to step into this arena.
This is a massive development.
The sources state China may be preparing to provide Iran with money, spare parts, and even missile components.
This is where the situation threatens to evolve from a regional conflict with proxy elements into a full-scale global proxy arena involving the world's 3 major military powers.
It's all connected now.
It is. If we look at the architecture of what is being described, we are seeing the potential formation of a triad of support for Iran. We already have Russia providing the eyes, the intelligence, and the satellite targeting data.
Right.
Now, the intelligence suggests China might provide the muscle and the lifeline.
By lifeline, you mean the money and the spare parts.
Exactly. A degraded military doesn't just need to see targets. It needs the physical means to shoot at them and the financial means to keep its military economy from collapsing under the weight of U.S. sanctions and strikes.
Which China has plenty of.
If China steps in to provide the financial backing, the spare parts to keep surviving machines running, and the actual missile components to replenish the arsenals that the U.S. is actively trying to deplete, it completely changes the calculus for Washington.
Because at that point, you aren't just trying to outlast Iran.
Precisely. You are no longer just trying to empty Iran's localized stockpiles. You are indirectly engaging in a contest of industrial and financial endurance with China, while simultaneously trying to outmaneuver the intelligence apparatus of Russia.
You are fighting the proxy, but you are battling the resources of 2 superpowers.
It elevates the stakes and the potential duration of the conflict to an almost unimaginable level.
It is staggering to think about. You have a degraded Iran serving as the focal point, but they are being propped up from 2 sides. Russia points to the target, and China hands them the ammunition and pays the bills.
It's a highly coordinated lifeline.
And the diplomatic momentum certainly doesn't seem to be slowing down. The final piece of evidence in our sources notes a recent phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Iranian president.
This was reported by the Russian state news agency, TASS.
Right. During this call on Friday, they reportedly agreed to continue contacts as the conflict unfolds. Now, CNN notes they have asked the Kremlin and the Russian embassy for comment on the broader intelligence sharing, but the agreement to continue contacts is out there in the official state media.
Continue contacts might sound like standard diplomatic boilerplate, but in the specific context, it is a glaring signal.
Why is it so glaring?
In the midst of explosive global allegations that Russia is actively providing lethal targeting data against American forces, for Moscow to publicize a phone call where the leaders agree to keep talking is a clear, defiant statement of solidarity.
They aren't hiding from it.
Not at all. It is Russia publicly stating that they are not intimidated by U.S. military operations, and they are not backing away from their relationship with Tehran.
It basically validates everything Colonel Mansour said.
It absolutely validates the tit-for-tat nature of this proxy war. The battle lines are not just being drawn, they are being hardened and solidified in real time, right in the open.
Okay, we have covered an immense, complex landscape today. Let's take a breath and synthesize the journey we've just taken through these sources.
It's a lot to process.
We started with a deeply concerning tactical reality. Russian satellites, according to multiple intelligence sources, are stepping in to provide a highly sophisticated eye in the sky for a severely degraded Iranian military, feeding them the coordinates of U.S. troops, ships, and aircraft.
The tactical threat?
We juxtapose that dangerous reality with the U.S. administration's incredibly aggressive public messaging. A strategy of projecting absolute, unbothered confidence, claiming total intelligence supremacy, asserting that Iran has been neutered, and insisting the U.S. is the one putting the other guys in danger.
The messaging disconnect.
We then viewed this friction through the analytical lens of military history, exploring Colonel Mansour's argument that this is simply the brutal, expected tit-for-tat payback for the U.S. providing similar targeting intelligence to Ukraine against Russia.
The historical context.
And finally, we looked at how this web is expanding, threatening to drag a hoped-for rapid 4-week conflict into a protracted, grueling proxy war, exacerbated by the looming possibility of China providing the financial and material muscle to complement Russia's eyes.
It really changes the scope of everything.
It is, without a doubt, a dizzying and profoundly precarious moment in global geopolitics.
It is a moment of profound recalibration. We are watching the fundamental architecture of global conflict evolve before our eyes. The barriers to entry for superpower involvement in regional conflicts are changing.
They are completely eroding.
And as we conclude our analysis of the reporting today, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final lingering thought to ponder based on everything we've unpacked.
Please do.
This raises a vital question about the future of global security. If sharing precise, lethal intelligence on troop locations is now simply the expected tit-for-tat standard for global superpowers, as we see the U.S. doing in Ukraine, and as intelligence suggests Russia is doing in Iran, where exactly is the line drawn in modern warfare?
Yes, the real question.
At what point, strategically and practically, does providing the exact coordinates for a strike become utterly indistinguishable from pulling the trigger yourself?
That is the defining question of this new era. A massive thank you to you, our listener, for joining us on this incredibly intense deep dive today. We know it's heavy material, but your curiosity and your commitment to understanding the true complexities of our world beyond the simple headlines are exactly what make this show possible. Keep asking those hard questions, keep looking deeper, and we will catch you on the next one.